I found the phone by accident. That's the part one keep replaying, because if I hadn't dropped my keys that night, I probably would have married her. Her name was Lena, and at that point we'd been together a little over 3 years. We lived together, split rent, had one of those lives that looked stable from the outside. Same grocery store every Sunday. Same takeout place every Friday. Shared streaming accounts, shared bathroom shelf, shared plans for sometime next year. Nothing about us looked like a relationship that was ending. If anything, it looked like one that had already settled into permanence. That's why I ignored the first few weird things. She started taking her phone into the bathroom with her. Then she changed the password. Not a huge deal on their own. People get more private sometimes. Work stress, family stuff, whatever. Then she started charging it face down. Then she became weirdly protective of her car. That was new. Lena had never cared about her car. It was an older silver Honda she only cleaned when the windshield got so dusty it became dangerous. She left receipts everywhere. Empty water bottles on the passenger floor. One winter I found an entire bag of groceries in the trunk that she'd forgotten for 2 days. Then, suddenly, she was locking it every time, even when it was parked directly outside our apartment. If I borrowed it to run somewhere, she wanted it back right away. If I moved anything inside, she'd notice. One night I came back from getting food and left the spare keys on the kitchen counter. She picked them up and said, "Why do you have my car key? You told me to move it for street cleaning." "I know. Just asking." But she didn't sound like she was just asking. She sounded like someone checking whether a locked door had been opened. That was the first moment I felt it. Not proof. Not even a real accusation. Just that small internal shift where your brain says, something is wrong. The problem is, once that thought gets in, everything starts looking suspicious. A late text becomes a secret. A work dinner becomes a lie. A tired mood becomes guilt. So I tried to be careful with myself. I didn't want to become one of those paranoid people who blew up a good relationship because they noticed a pattern that wasn't there. I told myself to wait. Then came Thursday. Lena worked in marketing for a medical supply company. Usually she got home around 6:30. That Thursday she texted me at 7:10 saying she had to stay late because her boss dumped a last-minute presentation on her. It annoyed her enough that the text felt believable. No emojis. No extra explanation. Just. Still at work. Don't wait for dinner. At 8 o'clock I opened the delivery app. At 8:15 I heard her laugh outside the apartment window. I froze. We were on the second floor, and our window faced the lot. I looked through the blinds and saw her getting out of a black SUV. Not her car. She was standing on the passenger side, smiling at someone still inside. Not just polite smiling. Comfortable smiling. Familiar. She leaned back into the open door for half a second, like she was saying something private, then stepped away and closed it. The SUV pulled out before I could see the driver clearly. A minute later she came upstairs carrying her work bag and walked in like nothing had happened. I was standing in the kitchen. "Hey," she said. "Thought you were working late." She didn't miss a beat. I was. Jen dropped me off because I left my car at the office. That answer came too fast. Not stumbled through. Not improvised badly. Prepared. I remember nodding like I accepted it, even though every part of me had tightened. "Long day?" I asked. "The worst," she said, tossing her bag onto the chair. "I'm exhausted." Then she kissed me on the cheek and went to shower. I stood in the kitchen staring at the chair where she'd dropped her bag. The problem wasn't just that I thought she was lying. It was how smoothly she lied. Like she'd already rehearsed what version of the evening I was allowed to have. I barely slept that night. The next morning, she left early for work. I watched from the window as she got into her Honda and drove away. For a second I actually felt relieved. Maybe I had misread everything. Maybe the SUV really belonged to a coworker. Maybe the weirdness with the phone and the car was unrelated. Maybe I was building a story out of stress. That relief lasted until Saturday night. We'd gone to dinner with friends and got home around 11. Lena was tired and went inside first while I stayed downstairs to grab the overnight bag from her trunk. We were supposed to drive to my sister's place the next morning, and she'd thrown some things in the back earlier. I unlocked the trunk, pulled out the bag, and dropped my keys. They slipped under the back passenger seat. I crouched down and reached underneath. My fingers brushed something smooth and cold. It wasn't my keys. I pulled it out and saw a phone. A cheap black smartphone in a plain case. Not her actual phone. Not mine. No stickers, no cracks, no personal touches. Just a second phone hidden under the seat. I stared at it for a few seconds like my brain refused to label what I was holding. Then I hit the side button. The screen lit up. No wallpaper. No notifications visible. Just a lock screen with the time and a 6-digit passcode prompt. I remember looking up toward our apartment window, half expecting her to be standing there. She wasn't. My first thought wasn't even she's cheating. My first thought was something worse and dumber. How long has this been happening without me knowing? I put the phone in my jacket pocket, grabbed my keys, and went upstairs. Lena was in the bathroom taking off her makeup. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe normally. There's a very specific kind of panic that comes with finding evidence before you're emotionally ready to understand it. You don't feel anger first. You feel disorientation. Like the room is still familiar, but the rules inside it have changed. She came out a minute later. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah. Just tired." She nodded and plugged in her real phone on the nightstand. That was when I noticed something else. Her real phone was at 14%. The hidden phone had been nearly full. A stupid detail, maybe. But it made the second phone feel active. Recent. Used. Not forgotten. I didn't confront her that night. Part of me wanted to wake the whole building up with it. Pull out the phone. Demand answers. Watch her scramble. But another part of me knew that the second I showed my hand, whatever truth existed would become harder to reach. Because people don't confess when they're cornered. They manage. They edit. They give you the safest version of the truth they think you'll accept. So I waited. The next day, I made an excuse not to go to my sister's. I said I wasn't feeling well. Lena seemed almost relieved. She spent most of the afternoon in the living room answering emails, or pretending to. I watched her move through the apartment with the casual rhythm of someone who still thought she was in control. Around 4, she said she needed to run out for coffee and a prescription. The second she left, I took out the hidden phone. I tried birthdays. Our anniversary. Her old ATM pin. Nothing. Then I noticed a tiny fingerprint smudge pattern on the screen near the lower right side, like someone always typed one area more heavily. It gave me an idea. I turned the phone toward the light and looked for the most worn numbers on the keypad. It was a guess, but a good one. When I entered the code, the phone unlocked. I wish it hadn't. Sometimes I think the waiting was the worst part of that relationship. But it wasn't. The certainty was worse. There were only 4 apps on the home screen. Messages. Photos. Notes. Uber. That was enough. The messages were between Lena and a contact saved only as D. The oldest thread on the phone went back 8 months. 8 months. Not a stupid mistake. Not one bad week. Not some drunken lapse she regretted instantly. A full second relationship built in secret. The texts were the kind that make your body go cold because they're so ordinary. Not dramatic movie stuff. Worse. Logistics. Familiarity. Repetition. Are you leaving now? He's still home. Give me 20. You left your watch here. Miss you already. Thursday still works. And then others that were impossible to misread. I hate lying to him. Then don't. It's complicated. It's only complicated because you live with him. I kept scrolling, hating myself for it and unable to stop. There were hotel confirmations. Photos of his dog. Screenshots of apartments. Then one note from Lena that made my hands start shaking. If things go badly, I can stay with you for a while. He still thinks we're talking about engagement, so I need to handle it carefully. I had to put the phone down after that. Not because I was overwhelmed. Because suddenly the whole future I thought we were building looked like a set someone forgot to take down after filming ended. She knew I was thinking about engagement. She had sat across from my mother at dinner 2 months earlier and smiled through a conversation about venues. She had let me talk about lease renewal and summer trips and a dog. All while planning where she'd stay if things went badly. The most humiliating part of betrayal isn't always the cheating. Sometimes it's realizing the other person was calmly standing one move ahead while you were still playing honestly. I heard her keys at the door and locked the phone just before she walked in. You still feel sick? She asked. A little. She set the coffee on the counter and looked at me for a second too long. Did you go anywhere? The question hit me immediately. No, I said. She nodded, but I could see the quick scan in her eyes. The room. The counters. The chair by the bedroom. She was checking whether something had changed. That night she barely touched me. She scrolled her real phone in bed, then turned away and fell asleep. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, hearing one sentence over and over in my head. He still thinks we're talking about engagement. By Monday, I knew I had to confront her. Not because I wanted closure. Because once you know the truth, sharing space with someone pretending becomes unbearable. But I wanted one thing first. I wanted to know who Dee was. So while she was in the shower before work, I took the hidden phone into the kitchen and opened the thread again. There was a number attached. I copied it into my phone and searched it through payment apps and social media. It came up under a name. Daniel Mercer. His profile picture was private, but I found a company page with the same name attached to a local real estate office. Late 30s. Clean cut. Smiling headshot. Not some mysterious stranger from another city. A local man with a licensed professional smile. I felt sick in a new way then, not just because she'd cheated, but because the whole thing had physical shape now. Name, face, office, neighborhood. A real person who had been moving around inside my life without my knowledge. That evening, I came home early and waited. Lena got back around 6:40. She walked in, set her keys down, and knew immediately something was different. Maybe it was my face. Maybe it was the hidden phone sitting on the kitchen table between us. She stopped moving. For a few seconds neither of us said anything. Then she looked at the phone and closed her eyes. Not surprised. Not confused. Just tired. That hurt more than denial would have. What is that? I asked, even though the question was ridiculous. She opened her eyes. Can we sit down? No. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that. How long? I asked. She looked at the table. I don't know. I laughed once because it was such an insane answer. You don't know? I mean, I know when it started. She swallowed. It wasn't supposed to become what it became. There's an 8-month message thread in that phone. She flinched. So she knew I'd seen it. Then why are you asking? Because I want to hear you say it. She put both hands on the counter and stared at them. 8 months. I thought hearing the number from her would feel clarifying. It didn't. It just made me aware of how many ordinary days fit inside 8 months. Birthdays. Family dinners. Holidays. Weekends. Random Tuesdays where I made her coffee. All of it contaminated. Who is he? I asked. She hesitated. Someone I met through work. Daniel Mercer. Her head snapped up. You looked him up. You hid a second phone in your car. She looked away again. Yes. Daniel. I nodded once. Were you ever going to tell me? I was trying to figure out how. That answer made something in me finally harden. No, I said. You were trying to figure out how to leave without looking like the bad person. She stared at me and said nothing. And silence can be its own confession. I asked if she loved him. She didn't answer fast enough. Then she said, very quietly, I didn't mean for this to happen. I remember pointing at the phone. People love saying that like they slipped and fell into a second relationship. Tears started forming in her eyes then, and under any other circumstances I might have softened. But there's a point in betrayal where someone else's guilt starts to feel like performance, even if it's real. Did you ever stop? I asked. At any point in 8 months did you think maybe I deserve not to be humiliated in my own apartment? I never wanted to humiliate you. You just wanted all the benefits of staying until your exit plan was ready. She whispered, that's not fair. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because fairness had apparently re-entered the conversation at the worst possible time. I told her I'd read the note. The one about engagement. That was the first thing that visibly broke her. She sat down hard in the chair like her legs gave out. I didn't mean it like that, she said. How did you mean it? I was scared. Of what? Losing the guy you were cheating on me with? Or losing the apartment before you lined up somewhere else to go? That's not what this was. Then tell me what it was. She cried then. Really cried. Hands over her face, shoulders shaking. And maybe some of it was genuine. Maybe a lot of it was. I'm not pretending she felt nothing. But there's something surreal about watching the person who betrayed you grieve the consequences as if the disaster arrived from outside. Eventually she said she had felt trapped for months. That we'd become routine. That things with Daniel had started as just talking. That she knew it was wrong. That every week she meant to end one thing or the other and failed. In other words, a series of choices described as weather. I told her we were done. She nodded like she already knew. Then she asked if she could stay a few days until she found somewhere else. That might have been the most offensive part of the entire conversation. Not because it was irrational. Because it showed she still imagined me as a usable part of the transition. A soft landing. I said no. She packed a bag that night and called someone from the bedroom with the door shut. Probably him. While she was stuffing clothes into a suitcase, I sat in the living room listening to hangers knock against each other in the closet and felt this strange, ugly mix of heartbreak and embarrassment. Not just because I'd been cheated on. Because I'd been managed. That was the word I kept coming back to. Managed. My suspicions managed. My future managed. My role in her life managed until she was ready to switch tracks. She left around 10:30 with 2 bags and said she was sorry before closing the door. I didn't answer. For the next few weeks, people asked me the worst possible questions. Did you have any idea? Are you okay? Do you think she really loved him? The truth is, those questions are useless after something like that. What matters isn't whether there were clues. There always are. What matters is whether you can trust yourself again after spending months standing inside a lie and calling it home. A month later, I found out something I still think about. Not because it changed anything. Because it completed the picture. One of Lena's friends reached out to apologize for not saying anything sooner. She told me Lena and Daniel hadn't just been talking about moving in together. They'd been seeing apartments for weeks. Apparently Daniel had been pushing her to leave me already, and she kept delaying it because she didn't want to blow up her life all at once. That line stayed with me. She didn't want to blow up her life all at once. Mine, apparently, was acceptable collateral. The hidden phone is gone now. I smashed it a few days after she moved out. Not out of rage. Honestly, I wish it had been rage. It was more like I didn't want an object in my apartment that proved how easily someone could live 2 lives while standing 3 feet away from me. But I still think about the moment under the car. Reaching for my keys. Feeling something cold under the seat. Pulling out a second life. If I hadn't dropped them, I don't know how much longer it would have gone on. Maybe until the lease ended. Maybe until she had somewhere better lined up. Maybe until I proposed. That's the part that still gets me. Not that she cheated. That she might have let me build the next stage of my life on top of a lie she had already outgrown. So if you've ever had that feeling, that tiny shift when someone you love starts guarding their phone, guarding their car, guarding parts of themselves they used to leave in the open, don't ignore it just because you're afraid of being wrong. Being paranoid feels ugly. But being quietly deceived while you keep acting in good faith is worse. I found the phone by accident. And sometimes I think accidents are the only reason the truth ever gets a fair chance.